Please be silent. How you doing, Victory Seekers? You're watching Onward with ONRIE live, and I'm your host, ONRIE Comicon. Now, today's guest needs no introduction, but he's getting one anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have in the house my convention brother. We've been traveling the circuit for the last couple years together. We've been learning from each other. We've become very good friends. He's one of the my most trusted allies in the comic book industry. It is my very sincere pleasure to welcome TED SIKORA to the show. Ted, you are here.
Hey, thanks for having me, bud.
No problem, man. Hey, there's probably a ton of people watching this who are not familiar with your work and what you do. So if you could give us a moment, tell us who you are and what you're all about.
Right on. Well, I started doing, back in the 90s, I was in a rock band. We made a musical. And then in 2005, my friend Milo Miller and I wrote and produced an indie feature film called Hero Tomorrow. And within Hero Tomorrow, Hero Tomorrow is about a guy who has an idea for a superhero. He can't get it published, but his girlfriend is an aspiring fashion designer, and she makes him a costume of his own character for Halloween. Then he starts running around in it trying to fight crime. So we thought it would be fun, as this film was playing the festival circuit, to do the book that was in our main character's head. And that became APAMA the Undiscovered Animal. And it's a completely separate world. It is about a Hungarian ice cream truck driver on the streets of Cleveland who unlocks the spirit force of the most savage beast mankind has never known and becomes Cleveland's resident superhero. So started doing that, and then got into Tap Dance Killer, which was a villain who was introduced into the APAMA world. And I mean, that's a general kind of 30 years.
Well, don't undersell the Tap Dance Killer here, Ted. Tell us all about the Tap Dance Killer.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've learned from ONRIE, doing shows, is we both started with books that were very hard to pronounce. We could argue about whether APAMA the Undiscovered Animal is harder to remember than Yi Sun Shin, but I started to realize that, when we introduced this character, Tap Dance Killer, in APAMA, she was being liked and shared by the thousands on our social media. So I thought, all right, I'm going to sort of read the tea leaves here, and we're going to put her into her own series. And I always admired Henri's pitch for Yi Sun Shin, because it's like he's like a gunslinger. I mean, the pitch is so fast, and he can just boom, 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 pitch.
Ted, stop kissing my ass on air. Talk about
right,
you,
well,
goddammit. It's not about me.
So
you see the shirt I'm wearing today? How often do you see me change my shirt?
Well, I did get this Tap Dance Killer pitch down pretty fast. So I'm going to do my pitch, but it's been a while since I did my pitch, and I might screw it up. But here we go. I would be like,
it up already.
Imagine I just handed you this book, and they're like, "Well, what's this about?" I'm like, "This is Nikki St. Clair. She's a mega talented actor who gets cast in a horror show musical as the Tap Dance Killer, but then she can't shake the role and starts trying to wipe out the mafia. It's kind of Punisher meets Rocky Horror Picture Show. Winner of the best series of the year on Critical Blast, and I'm selling these babies for $20. What do you think?" That's it.
And you know what? I got to tell you, man, that hardcover is beautiful. I was a part of the Kickstarter. I waited very patiently for it, and I love it. And I love everything that you've been putting out. I've always looked at what you're doing, because you and I, the one thing we've always shared in common is that we're major Spider-Man fans.
Yeah.
And I think, what you've managed to do with APAMA by creating a superhero that is, essentially like what Spider-Man would be perceived like in real life if he actually existed. You know what I mean? And I love your take on it. I love your approach. You channel a lot of the stuff that made Spider-Man great when we both loved Spider-Man, like in the 80s and 90s. And Spider-Man's been great long before that, and after that too. It's not like any of it got some of it got bad, but there have been blips, like there is anything. But you've really channeled that. Rather than saying, I want to be the guy who writes Spider-Man, you're the guy who decided that he's going to make a book about, something that is his own thing. And I admire that since, like, incredibly. And the way that it's transitioned over to Tap Dance Killer. And now there's another character in your book, Punchline.
Yes.
And you've been really pushing that character a lot too.
Exactly. Well, going back to the Spider-Man thing, both Milo Miller, the co-writer on APAMA, and myself, we're huge, Bronze Age Marvel fans. We grew up in the 70s. And in particular, my biggest influence is Stan Lee. And I love just, if you go through, the first 20 issues of Spider-Man or Fantastic Four, the way they sort of built this rogues gallery, and that to me was just fascinating, because you have issue after issue, iconic characters are introduced, and that is what we aimed for. So we weren't really looking for like this long arc of like a hero versus a villain. We kind of have that going on with our Regina character, but along the way, we're dropping in all these other characters, and that is how Tap Dance Killer was sort of introduced, as sort of this idea that harkened back to the musicals we did back in the 90s. I took the villains from this musical and put them into the comic, and then there you have it. But it's sort of taking that, not trying to, the thing I say is, when people are like, well, is this just a Spider-Man ripoff or something? Oh, no. I mean, our guy drives an ice cream truck for a living. So this is not your brilliant Peter Parker. He's not wealthy. There are no superhero buddies in his Rolodex. So he's just got to figure it all out himself. He's based loosely on guys I used to change tires with at my dad's shop when I was growing up. So I think he's a very different kind of character. But the grounded thing that Peter Parker has, the everyman, as much as I love Spider-Man, I don't know anybody as brilliant as Peter Parker, or like Ilya in our APAMA series, he is the dude who could live across the street from you, and he's a little.
Well, I think that's what the appeal of Spider-Man was, is that he was so relatable. Like we could see ourselves as Peter Parker, that Parker luck, the infamous, horrible Parker luck. And, sometimes I think we can all even stand, he always said he related most to, Spider-Man as, in terms of the superheroes he created, that and Silver Surfer too. But, an interesting segue I want to take right now with this conversation, and one of the things that we also connect on very well as professionals and friends, is our very hands-on approach to tackling layouts for our books. And actually, you go even beyond that. I know that you're also coloring and lettering your books as well.
True. Yeah.
And I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I think it's something that we don't really get credit for. That we're like seen as like the writer, it's like the writer, don't get me wrong, it's not like the writer brings a lot to the table, but you and I both know layouts. I mean, tell us your approach. Like what got you to the point where you're like, what, I should be giving the artist as much direction as I possibly can in order to get the story exactly how I want it.
Well, I'm dealing with 3 different artists: Benito Gallego on APAMA, Donny Hadiwijawa on Tap Dance Killer, and then on
Say
Bloom.
that 10 times fast. Jeez, that was perfect pronunciation too.
But then the inker is Cesare Suenda, so that's equally difficult. But I love these guys. And then on Bloom, which is another thing, APAMA 5 introduced the nemesis of our series, Regina, and she is getting her own spin-off titled Bloom. I'm working with Butch Mappa on that. So, and
I've seen the artwork for it. It looks phenomenal. The cover you have for it, I mean, you're firing on all cylinders right now, Ted.
Appreciate that. So with the layouts, I don't come from a comic book writing background. I come from a filmmaking background, and with Hero Tomorrow, I had never made a feature film before, so I actually did storyboard the entire movie. It was like 1,500 images. So I got very comfortable with how a sequence of art panels would tell a story. So when I always give the artist, the opportunity to do a quick rough layout, and I take that immediately, size it to an exact comic book page, drop it into Illustrator, and I do the lettering, the first pass of, lettering right away. And I can see if I have room for the letters, or if there's opportunities to change the layout. So then probably more than half the time I will grab my little friendo here, and he helps me do the layouts. If somebody needs to look surprised and I want them surprised from, there's this angle.
You know,
or maybe I want it from this angle.
Another thing you could do is you could just call me up and say, "Hey, Henri, you just won a free dinner from Ted," and I would do that same surprise pose and look and everything.
No, he would be going, no, not another one, not another one, Henri.
And we'll get to that, folks. But go on. So you use this model, and it helps
do.
you.
I take my phone, I snap a photo of it, and then I get into Photoshop, and then I position them into the panels. I'll make the gutters. I'll actually sometimes, most of the time, I will give them then the final gutters on the second pass of the lettering, so they don't even have to do that. That's a layer, and then they can just draw underneath digitally if they're doing it digitally. And you know, I have a Cintiq, so I will draw things, but I have found that the little figures are so fast, and they can do things that I can't possibly do illustrating. And
I think that's a very difficult thing, you know, to kind of get across. You know, like I forgot where I've had this conversation, but recently I was talking with an artist, and it's like, or about art with somebody. Oh yes, it was on another interview I did. And the thing about a comic book page is everything's static. No matter how you draw it, no matter how loosely you draw it, it's static because it's not moving. And it's that motion, it's that, you know, sequential, you know, it's the way you draw the figure, obviously, that makes it look like it's in motion. But, you know, it's also just these other techniques. And, you know, I find the one thing I find fascinating about you is that, like, there's nothing you haven't done in life. You were changing tires growing up, and then you went to you decided you're a movie maker. So now you're a movie maker and you've made a movie. And then you decided, I'm going to make comics. And now you're making comics. And, you know, your film work has actually helped you spin off and have your own career. You've built your own career out of filmmaking. You know, I envy that. Fuck you, Ted. Yeah.
Well, I can't decide what I want to do. So,
might as well do it everything.
Yeah, right? I don't know. It's, sometimes it's, you know, people want to pigeonhole you, you know, they want to think of me as like a filmmaker, which is great, you know, but like, I'm very serious about my comic book work. And
yes, you are. And I mean, that hands-on approach of taking everything, bringing it down into Illustrator. I mean, I don't even work that. I don't even see it like that. You know, like you're already seeing, you know, the balloons. Like my art is so fucking bad that like, I can't even see it that way. And you told me to get those figures. And I got one from China, and it just like broke apart, and like
was it this
didn't last as long as the coronavirus. I'll tell you that.
This one,
yes, but it was gray.
Okay,
and it came with a female and a male, and everything. Like anytime I tried to pose it, it broke. She is
bad. Her head just pops off all the time. You know, it's really problematic. But that's why I got that other one. It's kind of, this one's a little jangly though. Like, you know, he's starting to get loose. But man, the poses this one can do. Look at that knee bend. Oh,
can you move it over? Yeah. No, that's a dynamic knee bend, and that's another thing. It's exaggerating the poses, right? And like this is like a perfect example of that, because like human anatomy, it's like we can't. I mean, there's certain things we can't do that in comics you need to do in order for the artwork to look more dynamic, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, these things can only do so much. Sometimes I will, even taking a photo of it, I'll still have to take the arms and split those off to new layers and bend them exactly where I want them. Or, you know, the idea is to get it close enough. These artists that I'm working with are really solid. So as long as I can give them a solid idea, you know, it doesn't have to be exact. But I mean, the models are nice. You know, you get some shading going on and things that could, I'm sure, inspire the final illustration that if I was to, you know, draw it, they would never get.
Absolutely. And, you know, one thing I find really fascinating about what we do is the creative work doesn't just stop with the book itself or our sales pitches. It goes beyond that, because now we also have to think about marketing, promoting, Kickstarters, and all this stuff. Where has your, like, why are you doing it and not somebody else? Like, what was the point when you were like, you know what, I can do this too?
Why am I doing? Oh, the like.
No, like what, like you're the face of your company. I'm sorry, I kind of phrased that wrong.
Oh, yeah, no.
And you're handling all of your promotion. I mean, you're the guy who we see at conventions most of the time. I know that you said Milo does shows too from time to time,
Some of the
but
local ones, yeah.
yeah, but you're the guy who's branching out. And
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's really economics. You know, I can make this sustainable if I keep my costs down. A, B, I kind of love it all, you know, and I like the lettering is so much a part of the creation in my process, because that first step where I get the layouts, I put the letters in, the story changes right then and there, you know, quite a bit. And I realize if my dialogue is good or not, or if it needs a tweak. New opportunities for the story are created as soon as I get those layouts. So the artist gets I give him the letters with the new layout, and then now they can see the story. They can see where the word bubbles are, and I think that affects them doing the final.
oh, absolutely. They don't have to.
Everything. Yeah. But then I get the pencils back. I drop that instantly right back into that same Illustrator file, and now that the letters are right there, it's done. You know, but it's another pass I get at the lettering. I get to see it again with the art. Do I really like this caption here? I mean, it's, maybe there's a caption that's glaringly wrong and I can't figure it out. I mean, this happens. There'll be 5 panels on a page and 4 of them are popping, but one of them I'm just like, man, I don't have a good transition for this. So I'm getting to think about that caption, that panel for weeks, because then the coloring, then the inks come back. I drop it in again. I see it again. And every time I see it, something becomes obvious about the lettering. So by the time the colors come back, the lettering is really close to done, and I'm just fine tuning at that point. And so, it's not like, oh, it's another thing I got to do. It is just, that is part of my, what I do as an artist is this sculpting this story. So I love it. I love doing that. I love being out at the shows. I think Milo would do a lot more of them if he could. He's got a job where he works weekends and really can't get away. But I just absolutely love being out there, introducing people to our stuff, getting feedback about it too. That's everything.
But to go into that more, like you've got this setup, and your setup is as elaborate as, your presentation of the actual book. Like, it's not like you can just walk by and not see, what you're doing at your booth. So that also requires, a set kind of a mindset kind of, so to speak. So do you see what you do at conventions as like a performance almost?
I don't think of it that way at all. I think of it as, what do I think of it as? I mean, it's just sort of an opportunity to introduce my work to people, and really give them what I feel is going to be a really solid read, something that they're going to really like. That's important to me, that it's not so internalized that it is something, that I'm trying to do for an audience, and hopefully they respond to it. But yeah, I don't think of like, hyping myself up to go out and do it. It seems like as soon as we're set up, the doors open and we're ready to go, and there's not really a lot of time to even think about that stuff. And
you're guilty, because you've gotten me to see conventions the same exact way. Because, when I used to go out there and be like, like I kind of get.
Oh, you're not doing that anymore? Wait a minute.
Well, not because of you, motherfucker. All right. You've kind of like pulled that away. But, I greatly admire your ability to make the best out of any convention. And I quoted you on this on the show multiple times, where you say, I'll try any show once, and any time that you're at a show, you just kind of make the best of the situation. You and I have been through good shows and bad shows together. There have been shows where I've done really well and you've done bad, and vice versa. Let's just take Louisville, for example.
I had such a bad spot in Louisville. This happened.
I would have fucking killed it over
I know. That was the best line of the weekend. I was Terrence Huddleston. he's the best, and he rocks. But if you happen to be cornered across from him, I had a print guy, a double print booth across from me, a print guy on this side of me that had a corner wedge. So you just couldn't even see my booth. Like, people were walking by. It was a 2-booth little partition along the edge of the wall, and you could not see my booth. Like, and if people weren't interested in prints, they didn't come down my aisle. It was brutal. So ONRIE, to make me feel better, he's like, hey, I know you're having a rough show. I think I would have still been able to perform pretty well in your spot.
But you know what? You got your revenge a couple weeks later when we were in
Steel City.
Steel City, because the exact opposite happened, and you had a great spot and you killed it, and I got fucking clobbered. And we just automatically laughed about it, because and I even when we were in Louisville, I said everything in jest, sort of.
I know, dude. It's all.
I was kind of nudging you a little bit, but
yeah. No, but you may have done well. You might have found a way to, because you're known to, potentially step a little further out of your booth and go grab the people.
I'm going to step out of my booth and go to yours and tell you how much better you'd be doing if you were in my spot, or how much better I'd be doing if I was in your spot. Man, I wish, depending on whether or not we're in Steel City or Louisville.
I would go back in time just to do that show again if we could switch places.
As long as you're out for doing it at Steel City,
I would redo every moment of my life from that moment just to prove it. But this brings us into now people are into the inner circle of our friendship, and now I think it's time to let them in on the inside joke about dinner. And the one thing that's been happening is, Ted, you were talking about saving money at these shows, and one thing you and I often do is we split our hotel costs, and we'll drive product back and forth for each other. Like, if I remember at Steel City, I didn't sell through everything, so you took what I didn't sell and you brought it to Detroit for me, because we were both there the following weekend. And shipped my books from to Atlanta for Dragon Con.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And, we do this for each other because we want to help each other. And that's the only way to really grow. And through the course of all this, I ended up buying a lot of hotels, and I would volunteer to get the hotel, and I'd just say, hey, Ted, why don't you just get dinner? And Ted agreed to it. So from there sparked something that I get limitless fun from. I get to be the guy who gets to go to conventions and have the TED SIKORA buy me dinner every night. And I miss that. That's the one thing I miss the most about the convention scene. Those free dinners, man. Oh man, they're the gift that keeps on giving. But that's a really important part of this too. Is because you're right. I mean, we've had to depend on each other to save money and to save so that we can bring home more and make this worthwhile, and not that it couldn't be done if we weren't doing, because most of the time we're not on the same show circuit anyway. It's just when our shows line up that we can do this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We were trying a bunch of shows last year that neither one of us had done, that were in between Chicago and Cleveland. It was the
most fun I've ever had. Just shows I would have never effing done. And I don't know why I'm abbreviating for fucking, but I would have never done any of these shows like the Detroit Comicon. That was so much fun.
We did great at that, and they canceled the show. Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah. And then what was the other one we did? Well, you turned me on to Steel City. I had a blast in Steel City.
Yep. Of course, Louisville. There's been a.
We got to get you out to what is it? Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I do want to do that.
I know. Well, Planet Comicon. That was what I kind of suckered you into doing. Yeah. And that was one of our first shows.
Comicon. Not that I'm sure it's a fine show, but I did notice, because we started out with trades, because we did digital on APAMA first, and then we did a trade collection. So when I did Planet Comicon, for instance, I didn't have any single issues, and then when Tap Dance Killer came out, we realized we didn't really want to wait, until we had a trade to put it out. So
and plus another thing too, you keep forgetting this caveat. That was not a good year of the show. 2018, they did it too early. They did it right before tax
February,
season.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was February, mid-February. That's not that's not enough time has passed. I mean, and
Yeah.
it depends on the area, of course. I know that there are some shows, particularly ones that started at the beginning of this year, that were really good, that I was like, man, I wish I would have done that. Like Honolulu Comicon, I heard that was good. And
Oh shit, man. That would be fun.
and then your Wizard World Cleveland, like you totally killed it over there.
Well, the thing about that one is our thing takes place in Cleveland. So everybody who comes by, we have that in, you know, like, hey, this story takes place in Cleveland. I open the book and I show them, you know, this is the West Side Market or whatever. And so I don't know, as, you know, indie creator to indie creator, if that's going to translate. I mean, I just love that show, but I don't think I would, you know I wouldn't do that well at another Wizard show, you know? So I just,
but your mindset has really helped me adapt. I mean that sincerely. Like your whole, because every time you're having a bad show, there comes Ted walking, and he's got a fucking smile on his face. He's just been rejected, like fucking, you know. And we all get rejected. I get rejected all the time, but you know, we share our war stories about like some of the best rejections we get, and you know, and we throw it. We use it against each other too.
Yeah.
You know, and that got me to completely change like how I see this stuff. You know, it's like, just because someone says no to you doesn't mean it's the end of the world. There's Ted. He's going to be walking around. He's been through it, and he's laughing about it. He's got a smile on his face.
When somebody gives you that, we always laugh about, and I'm sure a lot of creators will relate. You know, somebody says, you know, you give them the pitch, and they're like, "Nah, I don't really collect comics anymore," and that could be the end of it. But then they go on with, "I used to have a whole bunch in my basement." You know, and
everybody has gotten this. Everybody has gotten this.
And I really like Batman, but I didn't really collect Batman. I stopped sometime around the 90s, and you know, I will have to sit there and go, that's nice, yeah. But ONRIE's just like, hey, can I tell you about my comic to the next person?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
He just cuts them off.
Get the fuck out of
it is great. Oh man.
Well, you know, the thing is I think those guys are looking for the comic shop experience where they get to walk in and they can talk to the clerk or whoever's in the shop, and they can have conversations. And the stores, they depend on that because it's the community feel. Whereas we got this block of time where we have to sell as much as we can to essentially pay things off. But the thing that I also appreciate about you is that never once, like we've all gotten this. We've all gotten that rejection that you just described. But never once have I seen you take it personally and get bent out of shape about it. Never.
No.
And all the years that I've known you, it's just like, there's Ted. It doesn't matter if he's had, and it's almost like no one could tell if you're having a good day or a bad day. Even if you are having a good day, it's like, well, you know, he might be having a.
Yeah, I don't know. I try to keep things even keel. Something I think my dad ingrained in me, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. There are those lulls sometimes where you're just like, it's so weird. Like, especially, you know, sometimes the start of a show, you know, is so bad, and because nobody's really buying from indie creators at the first hour.
They are for me, damn it.
They are for you, but you're the only one. But I do find those people come back, you know, and sometimes they do come back. But yeah, so it's kind of weird. It's like you get to a point where it's like, man, this show is just so tough. Am I gonna get through it? And then all of a sudden you get a little roll going, and then you feel good again. But yeah, I think doing both the film and the comic book thing, it's so many roller coasters, you know, so many.
And let's not forget distribution, because you're not just distributing by going to cons, you're also dealing with Diamond, and you've had some success with that. They're still rolling out your stuff, and that's a lot for most people to take on. You know what I mean? Like a lot of publishers, independent publishers, they have dedicated salespeople to calling up retailers. You do everything yourself, and it's not even a second thought for you.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just the money thing. I mean, you know, if I was to pay someone else to do that, I wouldn't be able to probably afford to pay for the art or whatever I'm doing, you know, because I guess, you know, for me, coming from the film side of things and knowing how hard it is to get a feature film made, and locations and budget and actors and feeding the cast and crew. And, it's just like, once I stepped into the world of comics, I was like, man, like anything we dream up goes right into the page. And I don't have to think about all that other stuff. I still love cinema, but I've really come to appreciate comics as a purer form of art. Like, you're looking at a Spider-Man book, a comic. I mean, that's the real Spider-Man. When you go see a movie, that's a guy pretending to be Spider-Man. I think there's this sort of this epiphany I had when we started working on APAMA, that this is really what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. All my life I've been this huge comic fan, and now making them and knowing the tool, really fully realizing what a great tool comics are. I'm happy to do a lot of the roles, and it saves me money to do it too,
Absolutely. And, I love that attitude. I mean, that makes me want to keep doing what I'm doing,
all right.
And here's the thing too. It's like, here we are, we're two independent publishers. We're both kind of like trying to go for, we're going for broke with this. And essentially we don't know where our journey is going to take us. And, it's hard for me to look at things, especially with where we're at right now, because, I really want to get the Eastern Shin book turned into a movie. I really that's been a big priority for both Dak and I, is to get the right deal set up and to move forward with that. And as I look at what is going on with you and how you're tackling all these things, and you're just deciding like, okay, if I want to see this done, I'm just going to have to do it myself. I think there's a lot to be said about that, and the fact that you have this, you understand that, like, look, if I'm going to hire a sales guy, then that's going to eat, something this is going to eat out of my pocket. If I hire a letterer, the same thing. And rather than hire, you learn and you become more skilled at like all these different things. And another thing I wanted to kind of jump on too is, you mentioned how much more you were liking comics. Not that you were saying that you like comics more than film or anything, but that you like you see it, you appreciate the art form of it more. Whereas a lot of creators see comics as being restricting, because it's like, you got X amount of pages to tell a story. Whereas in a movie, you can exaggerate, you can space things out, you can have, periods of time without heavy dialogue and all this stuff. Here you are taking the reverse, approach to that.
Yeah, I guess I feel like you can still do all those things in comics, and that space between the panels lets the audience sort of create their own pace and connect dots that, in a film you kind of got to sort of give it all to them a little more literally, So I think there's we're not talking about writing just prose for like a novel. This is something in between. And that's what I really like about it, that you do get the character design, you get graphic and all the things that I kind of just love in my professional career, I just feel like comics encompasses all of that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like APAMA #3, we're on the moon, there's this creature that crawls out of the death of the moon. Like, try doing that in a movie, just imagine the budget,
Yeah.
It's insane. So, that's what I'm talking about, is sort of just this liberation.
Oh, so you're trying to insinuate that I misunderstood you and trying to make me look stupid on my own show. I see how it goes, Ted.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on, man. You're supposed to fucking laugh. Jesus. Gotta pull up your ass.
Oh, you're making a joke.
Of course. Yeah.
All right.
No, I totally see what you mean. It's like, and I think that you can take that even further. I remember Jill Thompson, I think it was, she said, like, it's much easier to write, 300 men storming a castle than it is to draw it. And, but you can reverse it too, right? It's like, if you, build out a set with that, it's like, it's expensive.
Yeah.
But in a comic, you can nail it in one panel, and it could either be a full shot or
Mhm.
a medium shot, or whatever the case is. It could be anything. It could be,
Yeah.
splash. And there is that thinking that goes on with how to properly structure a page. And I've always seen it as every single page individually should tell a story that has a beginning, middle, and end that leads your eye to the next page, and so on and so forth. What's your take on it?
Well, I really kind of consciously rebel away from sort of screenplay writing books and things like that. My theory is humans have been telling stories for tens of thousands of years, depending on what calendar you believe, and we didn't need story writing, script writing books. I think we're natural storytellers. So anytime I start looking at I'm not dissing what you just said, but for me, anytime I look at a model that I have to apply to my story, I feel constrained, and for better or worse, I feel when we're done, everything does have a beginning, middle, and end. And, I didn't think about it per se, I don't know. I'm kind of look at it like freeform jazz a little bit, and
Sure. And I love that that's like we have such a different like way of seeing it, because it's really that's what it is. And we're both storytellers, and we both have our own unique ways of doing things. And I honestly, from our conversations, a lot of our conversations have inspired layouts that I've done for Yi. But another aspect of what I really appreciate about you, Ted, is your desire to learn, not just from other creators. And you've had plenty of experiences schmoozing with the best, from Jim Shooter to having Roy Thomas write the introduction to your second volume of your book, to Jim Salerkrupp writing the intro to Tap Dance Killer, and so on.
Thank you for that introduction. Yes.
No, absolutely. You, motherfucker, are the king of deals at conventions. Like, you go, we've done these hunts where you get all these books and you get them for such good prices, and you're like, hey, Henri, look, I got this book right here.
What kind of segue was this? All right.
Well, I just wanted to pull out like how, you're a purger of good deals, and you leave your good friend Henri with shit at the end. But that's just a joke.
Well, no, it used to be different, where when I started doing so I'm a collector as well, as as Henri, and when I started doing the shows and the MCU was starting to really develop, I was just thinking, man, there's a lot of characters that really haven't been in the MCU that I'm sure are going to be in the MCU or whatever. And I just would go through and find these real steals, And
then he would come up to my table and be like, hey, look, I got all these comics here. They're all like real cheap and shit. And I'm like, well, is there anything left? He's like, no, I got the last one. Every time it's like, oh, I got the last one.
Well, so then Henri gives me this assignment. I'm like, I'm going to a show just on my own. I'm not really.
It wasn't an assignment. It was a favor. It was a favor. I asked a favor of my friend.
He's like, hey, if you find any really good deals on books that are going to be really valuable, would you pick them up for me? Like,
and then I'll let you buy me dinner as a result.
Yeah. So it's just. I think there's something about being a human where, like, if you see something that's a great deal and it's something you're looking for, you kind of just keep it, I don't know. It's like, oh yeah, I just found the first appearance of the Black Spectre in Moon Knight for $5. It's worth about 150. You want it for $5, Henri?
I'll do it for $5.
Of course you will. I mean, but I earned my Moon Knight stripes, man.
You know what you do, because you do make an effort to get out there. But going further, you're not just buying comics because of their value. Because let's face it, you haven't really sold a lot of these books yet. And you have a real genuine attachment to them, and you're also learning from them too. And you have turned me on to so much stuff, like those DC books that were written for girls back in the 50s.
The romance comics.
Yes, the romance comics.
Those are
those are fantastic. And you can so clearly tell that they were written. Oh, okay. You can so clearly tell that they were written for women. And here they are. It's just like you can go digging through and there's all these $2 comics. Yes.
Look at these covers. I die for these covers. I just think they're the greatest thing ever. And So I'm always trying to, get inspiration, because especially for Bloom, which takes place in the 60s, they just don't make them like this anymore.
Well, there's something to take. There's something to
drama.
take. There's something to take from it too. Yeah, absolutely. It's the drama, but it's also like this is how you could say it's how you appeal to a certain market, but you want to take those kinds of concepts and see where you can use them in your own work. And the more you're exposed to it, like you've turned me on to Moon Knight, which I still haven't gotten around to reading. So I guess you haven't turned me on, but you convinced me to buy a shit ton of them for like $2 a pop.
Right there. I did it.
You did lead me to a deal. And Dak has been,
you got a Nova #1 because of me at another show.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I'm still sitting on that. Still sitting on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hooked you up.
We got some great deals at Dragon Con, man. That was, we found some good ones. And I think every show, it's like we see all the same dealers anyway. You know, it's like a lot of these guys are at the same show. But I think what we do is hunters, when we're looking for, good deals on comics, it's not just affecting, what we're, hoping to gain monetarily, but what we're also looking to gain, for and improving our craft. And I think that's that's where I see that you've learned a lot, but what have your experiences been like meeting the creators that have had a significant impact on your career?
Oh, well, I met Stan Lee. I met him at Comicon or whatever, LA Comicon. And that was a really bittersweet moment, because I barely got to see him. It was the end of the show. They were like, I had nobody to watch my booth. So my one friend, Zan, showed up and she offered to watch the booth for like the last hour. I said, all right, I'm going to go try to meet Stan Lee. So I get over there. There's like 3 people in line. He's just about to finish, end of the show. And the guy's like, do you have your ticket? I'm like, what ticket? It costs $100 to see Stan. And I'm like, oh, I just, but they stopped selling tickets and you can't get one. I explained, well, I came in from Cleveland. Do you think there's any way? And he said, well, see that guy? And he points to this dude all the way down the floor. I ran him down. He sold me a ticket. I go to meet Stan. I get my APAMA in hand, it's volume 1. And I said, and well, let me tell this right. So Stanley's pretty tired, and he's just signing on to the next, signing. He's not even looking up at people at this point. And I told his handler, I said, look, I don't really care about getting my thing signed. I just want to talk to him. And so the handler asked Stan, hey, Stan, this guy wants to talk to you. Stan goes, that's all right. So I put the APAMA in his hand. Let me see if I can do it right here.
And that was something that was really great about Stan. He always had an open door policy. Anytime I emailed him, he would respond within like fucking 10 minutes. He hated having stuff on his desk, and he always
that's amazing.
And that's how he mentored Todd McFarlane when he was in high school and traveling for baseball. But like, anyway, you were showing everybody.
So I said, Mr. Lee, you've been a huge influence on me. And I want to thank you for all that you've done. This is something I created. It's a story of a Hungarian ice cream truck driver in Cleveland who unlocks the spirit force of the most savage beast mankind has never known. He slaps his pen down on the table, looks up, shakes my hand, and we have this great conversation, So
that's really awesome that he did that.
Yeah,
especially after being tired and everything.
Yeah,
from signing. Yeah.
And he's looking through the book and he goes, let's see if I gotta tell you, I can't see this.
This is a really bad Stan Lee impression, Ted.
My eyes are shot.
You're really fucking it up.
All right. So I get, I feel like I climbed the mountain to see the master, but he couldn't see my work, but I did get to tell him what he meant to me. So then enter ONRIE at New York Comic Con, and you bring Jim Salicrup by my booth, and you said, hey, Jim, I want you to check this guy's stuff out. I think you'll like it. It'll remind you of the classic Marvel stuff. So
yeah, particularly the stuff that he edited, because Jim was a very prominent Spider-Man editor back in the day. Yeah.
And so he took, I gave him a copy of APAMA Volume 1. The next day at the show floor, he sat with me for an hour and gave me the Marvel critique. And I learned so much in that hour and a half. And I to this day don't know that I've had a better hour of teaching from anybody. I really learned a lot. And he has since, kind of looked at anything I do, and he'll give me notes on it before we go to print, and he's been, so that was.
In fact, one thing he caught, because he's such a great guy.
I misspelled your name.
So for the Ted's Kickstarter for Tap Dance Killer, he had, how did you spell my name?
I don't know, maybe with a C, because you were comping all those dinners.
Fuckface, Copen.
Henri Compin with a C.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's really great. And Jim's always been he's been a big mentor for me, like, from when I got started. He actually is the one who introduced me to David Anthony Kraft, who is my co-writer, and he's absolutely. And he also nudged Stan for me too. When I had my big meeting with Stan to get him to write the forward, it was Jim who nudged him. You sent him an email and he's like, "Hey Stan, I got a buddy coming in. Can you take care of him?" And just from your experience meeting him, it's like Stan was just this guy who really, when he, and everybody's got their experience. Some people like him, some people hate him, whatever. But for people who really wanted and were really passionate about comics, he really went the extra mile to be that guy who we saw in front of the curtain, behind the curtain. You know what I mean? Like I love that, because it's like you could have told that story differently. It could have gone totally differently. It could have just been like, "No, I'm too tired. Sorry," and you wouldn't have been offended. It's not like but the story would have been different. I got to see Stan Lee walk off and just tell me to take a hike. And
no, it was huge. And getting back to Jim, like, it just goes to show how the ways you can touch people's lives by these acts of, generosity. And God, I didn't realize that he was one who introduced you to David, but like the stuff he taught me, and he's taught me along the way. I mean, I'm carrying that with me on every book I do. I teach comics, I do these high school, sort of summer classes. Those are lessons that get taught to every one of those kids.
Just remember, Henri likes house salads with grilled chicken. I hope you taught them that lesson. And $28 cocktails.
No,
I don't mean to diminish that.
But it goes to us being indie creators and helping each other out. Like the things that we do for each other, for whoever, the community. You don't know how far that spreads.
For sure, man. Now, another thing I think that's really cool about what you're doing is you are so much. I don't know how you do this better than me, but it's one of the few areas where you've kind of got a little bit of an edge on Henri. There's not a lot of areas where you do. I can't
imagine what you're going to bring up.
Well, I really admire your genuine connection with your daughter, and how she kind of works to critique you as well on what you do with Tap Dance Killer and this relationship you guys have, and how she helps you kind of like build your world, and granted your daughter's a lot older than my sons are, but my son, he's just like, he doesn't show much of an interest in really sitting down and developing a comic. He'll kind of go with it, but then it'll trail off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and we get that too, but she really does take interest in it, and she'll pose for me for layouts. That's, God, shame on me for not mentioning that. I mean, I'm showing the figures. I will have to show this page, because
please,
it is another thing that is so great is when I need a pose, like the beginning of Tap Dance Killer 1, she's breaking out of prison and she's balancing on the prison wall. So that's Jada right there. And then the image that it became, so here she posed for the cover. Like she made that pose, I said, I kind of want her to be sort of doing this dramatic surrender, and she did that. And there's another one. So yeah, she's
how do you ease her into it? Because, like, particularly with this quarantine, I think the biggest problem I've been having, particularly this week, is I've been getting busier. Like this week's just slammed for me with between production work on Yisun Shin, running the show, and just taking care of things that I need to do for the house, and getting orders out and all these kinds of things, and on top of that, all the other projects that I'm now editing. So between all that, I find it really hard to find time to really give to my son to allow him to be a part of it. And I've had to kind of keep him away from it because of the fact that, Yisun Shin is not a kid's book, but, and not to say that Tap Dance Killer is, but it's almost like you've kind of created something to help,
Well, it stems too from the fact that, I am married to a Black woman, and having a daughter of mixed race, I wanted something for her, for them, so that it's kind of baked in to this project, where the involvement is, it's sort of, we are family, and that's, so she, but even with APAMA, she's the first person who proofreads anything, and she catches stuff even after everybody else proofreads it. She's a really solid writer. So I'm very blessed in that way. During the quarantine, she's got her schoolwork, and I'm also trying to be cognizant to not push it on her. I think as parents doing these kinds of things, it would be very easy to say, to want to steer them into this. And I would rather she come to it with her own desire. So I try to keep it where it's not like an intensive thing that's a pain in the ass, that it's just like a fun thing when it comes up. But like that first layout I showed you where she's balancing on the wall, she had just gone to bed and she was still awake. I said, hey, before you go to sleep, can you do a couple photos with me? And so she said, okay. So she gets up, she does this balance. I'm looking at the camera and I'm like, all right, can we do a couple more? She was already back in bed and said, no, that's it. We're done. So I got that one shot, but it worked. It was perfect. So,
No, that's good. That's awesome. I mean, and I guess I have those experiences too with my son, but it helps too, because we also have to kind of motivate each other morally too while we go through this, because we're both leaving behind our families as we travel, and that's never easy either. No. It's like, especially when you got kids and we're leaving our wives with this heavy burden of being responsible for the kids while we're out and about. But you handle it incredibly well, I gotta say. I mean, it's never easy, but it's never made you're not that guy who's like, all right, I can't do this anymore because I'm too stressed out. You find a way to make it work.
Well, it helps that we've come up with ways to make our shows, profitable, between the two of us. I think we've done, I when I started out, I would hear a lot of times, well, you don't make money at shows. That's just for kind of, building your brand, and you were one of the first people that I met that just seemed like, oh no, I'm making money at shows, and that's how I'm financing.
Even though I wasn't at the time, it was all just bullshit.
We met at that Baltimore show. That was a tough one that year for me. I mean, that was.
Honestly, I find that show to be hard no matter what, and it's always it has this ebb and flow. But the interesting thing was I was having a conversation with Afua Richardson yesterday, and she told me that like a lot of all the big comic book creators, they come to the show to hang out because they host the Ringo Awards and things like that. And I'm like, that could explain why the atmosphere isn't as like aggressive as say like New York Comicon or like Dragon Con or anything like that. It's a good show. It always ends up being a good show, but it's tough. But yes, I remember you were you were right across from each other, and I was really taken by what you were doing because you had this huge setup for APAMA and you had the screen going, and I was just gawking all day long and looking at what, you had done over there.
Mannequin there. I had a full-size APAMA mannequin at that show and a TV. Yeah. Like we were showing the movie trailer. I used to come with so much stuff.
I still feel like you come with a ton of shit. I mean, your setup
but it's easier to pack now,
Yeah. I mean, much easier than it was before. Now you can at least take some of my stuff when you can tolerate it.
Your 300-pound golf bag or whatever.
Which I don't know if I can travel with that anymore, because they changed. There were some flight changes prior to all this happening. We'll see what happens now. I know when I fly again, this is it's not going to be an issue. But so last question, and then we're going to wrap this up. When do you think, now after everything that's gone on, when do you think is going to be the first time we'll be allowed back on the show floor? Do you think we're done for the year?
Oh, yeah, I probably do. I mean, unless it's a small local show, I don't think any big shows will happen this year. I don't know. Because we almost probably have to go through a year of knowing what it's like with the flu and the corona at the same time. We're not experiencing that yet. I can't imagine. What do you think?
I think you're wrong, Ted.
I hope I'm wrong. I do. I hope I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's like once San Diego got canceled, that was like, damn, they're taking this seriously. And every show is waiting until the last minute to cancel because they've got a lot invested into the show.
I thought Heroes might go. They took a long time.
That was a bummer. And I was looking forward to you doing that show. That's a fucking phenomenal show.
I wanted to do it.
Yeah. Well, we'll be there next year. It's no big deal.
I feel like the cold weather shows are going to be real tough. I don't see how that's going to.
I guess we have to take it one day at a time. But I know as of right now, like Dragon Con is fully intent. They're like, full speed ahead. Emerald City is supposed to take place in August. I have a feeling I was supposed to go from C2E2 to Seattle for Emerald City, but then that show got pushed back. For some reason, I have this gut feeling that that's going to be my first show. So I see it picking back up fourth quarter, and we can still score that touchdown and win the game for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds like a winner.
Are you going to wear a mask?
I don't know.
Stop being so selfish, Ted. It's not just about you.
No, I mean, are we?
You got to wear a mask
when the show happens. Like you're asking the question like the show is happening. I mean, we're talking about next year, or are we talking about?
No, I'm talking about like.
I'll be happy to wear a mask. I'll do a show tomorrow if I could wear a mask.
I don't know why you'd be happy. I don't like wearing masks.
Because you'd be at a show. You would be at a show. You'd be happy.
But we're not at a show. You just made that painfully clear.
All right. Are we done here?
I guess we are. But before I let you go, before I set you on your way, and I would like you to tell everybody where they can find you. And yes, of course. Hold on just a second. And any last words you wanna put on?
Just go ahead and kill my audio, and now go ahead and say that. No. That would be herotomorrow.com. I'm also on Facebook as Ted Sikora, TED SIKORA, or Facebook, herotomorrow.com, Instagram, Ted Sikora, Hero Tomorrow. Pretty much Hero Tomorrow or Ted Sikora, Twitter, anything. That's it.
Excellent. Dude, thank you.
I'll put link in the comments of this when it's posted.
Yes, please do that as well. And my friend, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today and to chat like we always do.
Sure, man. This is fun.
I
feel like we got to hang out.
Yeah, I did miss that, and I wanted it to be I wanted to try and set it up the way we do at most conventions. But I think the one thing that we are always open to doing is including more people into our circle. So when you catch both Ted and I at the same conventions, please know that if you want to join us for dinner and watch Ted pay for my meal, and and talk with us about comics, and just pick our brains. I think Ted is more than happy to tell you everything. I may not be as kind about that, especially if you don't buy me my $28 cocktail. But
28.
Didn't you say it's 28? It was fucking whiskey on the rocks, and they charged $28 for that shit.
Yeah.
I don't even know what brand whiskey it was. They were like, here, let try the top dollar one. I was like, well, I'm not paying shit.
Yeah.
But it was not a cocktail.
Make it a double. Ted's paying.
All right, Ted, you're eating into my time now, so we'll see you later, bud.
All right.
Best of luck to you, man. Honestly, I wish you nothing but the best with everything that you're doing.
Likewise.
We talk all the time. You know, I have such great faith in what you're doing, and it is an honor to be able to do these shows with you.
Same here, man. I had a blast doing all these shows, and I have learned immensely from you. So
as have I, you know, and you know, everything that you continue to teach me, I take to conventions with me. So I'm glad we were able to.
One last thing, because I told how fast the pitch is. Let's hear the Yisun Shin pitch.
Oh, come on. No one wants to hear the Yisun Shin.
I want to hear it. I want to hear it. For people who don't know, they need to know.
Yeah, they all know. Except they don't, and if they don't, they'll see it at a show. So,
all right, here it is.
All right. So Yisun Shin's about a Korean admiral that battled the Japanese in the 1500s. He was outnumbered 10-1, and he beat him 23 times in a row without losing. It's all based on a true story. We got a deal going on where if you buy 4 issues of our series, which I don't have in front of me, it's 4 comics for $10. You get all 9 comics. It's 9 for $23. We got our graphic novel. Normally it goes for $25, but right now we're selling it at $20. Stan Lee wrote the forward to it, and there's over 50 pages of bonus content, which how I'm doing this right now, it's not the same thing as the actual show experience.
No,
so you put me on the spot and you embarrass me. Get the fuck out of here, Ted. Yeah, my friend, I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now that he's out of the way, I just got to tell you guys, I really, you know, I love having relationships with people in the comics industry that are so close knit, like what I have with Ted. I really treasure that, and I highly recommend that all of you who are trying to pursue a career in this field keep an open mind. Look at your brothers and sisters on the front lines and see what you can learn from each other. Be friendly, you know, treat each other like friends, because as you can see, Ted and I do very different things, but we learn a lot from each other. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, as you know, but I can also nudge him, and, you know, and he nudges me too. You know, we do it, it goes back and forth, and that's what friendship's all about. And it's a very genuine thing. And that's one of the reasons why I asked him to come on the show today. And, you know, his wisdom has really, really gotten me to up my game at conventions. And I see things so differently. Rather than just focusing on the sellout, I see a much bigger picture. It's about the connection. It's about, you know, building the audience. Now, do I still want to sell out at conventions? Absolutely, I want to sell out at conventions. But when you're experimenting at shows, you can't always sell out. And that was one of the things Ted told me is, you know, sometimes you can't just sell out at a show if you've never done it before. So, you know, like I said, I learn a lot from him, and I look forward to learning from tomorrow's guest. So I hope you'll tune in with me tomorrow at hopefully 3 p.m. Central Time. Might be a little bit later. We'll see how things go. But there will be a new episode tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you. And until then, onward to victory.